Chapter 1100. Who exactly are you? As soon as he returned to the celestial realm, De Ming Luan flashed to the side and asked. He still did not believe that the person in front of him was Yu Qianqiu, but he felt that this person was related to Yu Qianqiu and the others. Yu Qianqiu wanted to use his divine sense to take De Ming Luan away, but De Ming Luan guarded against him as if he was a thief. De Ming Luan's divine sense forced him away and quickly dodged. Yu Qianqiu looked around speechlessly. After confirming that there was no one around, he quickly removed the disguise on his face. You. De Ming Luan looked at him in disbelief. He did not expect that it was really Yu Qianqiu. What about you? Hurry up and come with me. Yu Qianqiu's divine sense enveloped him, and he directly teleported to the underground palace in Utopia. Then he teleported to the underground base in the divine ruin realm. De Ming Luan was dumbfounded as he looked at the changing scenery around him. He shook his head as if he was dreaming. He was so shocked that he could not speak for a long time. Coincidentally, Yunnan Tian, who was leisurely observing the structure of the base, flashed past. Yu Qianqiu quickly waved his hand and said, "Where did Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Ping go?" Yunnan Tian was stunned. He looked at De Ming Luan in surprise, then pointed to the depths of the underground tunnel and replied, "They seem to be living in the innermost part. I don't know which room they are in exactly." "Let's go," Yu Qianqiu called out. De Ming Luan followed him doubtfully. The two of them turned left and right in the base and almost lost their way. They had no choice but to call Zhang Peng. Under Zhang Peng's lead, the two of them finally arrived at an underground cave. The so-called cave was an underground karst cave. An underground river flowed in the middle. There were many naturally formed caves on the other side of the river, causing the cave to have a universe inside. It was indeed a good place for meditation. "Old monster. I've already brought him back for you." Yu Qianqiu stood on the other side of the river and roared. His voice reverberated throughout the cave. Two people immediately appeared from the two caves on the opposite side. They were Yun Peng and Wei Chuanxiu. The two of them looked at the great bright wheel up and down. They heaved a sigh of relief when they saw that Yu Qianqiu was fine. They looked at Yu Qianqiu meaningfully but did not say a word of thanks. When De Ming Luan saw the two of them, he was a little stunned. "You're both here? What is this place?" Wei Chuanxiu pouted at Yu Qianqiu and said, "This kid said he's in the divine ruin realm." Divine ruin realm? De Ming Luan looked at the few people with a head full of fog and said, "What the hell is going on? How can you guys enter the divine ruin realm? Also, why did you bring me here? Nie Xiaoqian and the others are still waiting for me." He looked left and right, thinking that he didn't know how to leave, so he said angrily, "Hurry up and send me back. It's the way I brought you in." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, "Don't think too much about the rest. It's too dangerous for you to go back now. I can't let you go back and risk your life with them. You don't know this, but not long after you left, Wu Xiong exposed his hidden identity. It turns out that he's in cahoots with Wang Qing. They have a group of people in the underworld who are attacking the Dark Imperial Palace. Since they dare to rebel in the underworld, they must have something to rely on. If you follow Nie Xiaoqian and the others now, aren't you courting death? Attacking the Dark Imperial Palace? Wu Xiong and Wang Qing are in cahoots?" De Ming Luan was shocked. "I'm not sure what exactly happened, but I heard Wu Xiong call Wang Qing big brother." Yu Qianqiu immediately gave a rough account of what happened at that time. After listening, Wei Chuanxiu nodded in agreement and said, "De Ming Luan, this kid is right. You can't follow Nie Xiaoqian and the others anymore. Let's lie low in the divine ruin realm for now. If it's appropriate, it won't be too late for us to go out." Wu Xiong called Wang Qing big brother? Who are their father and aunt? How dare they attack the Dark Imperial Palace? De Ming Luan muttered to himself. After pondering for a long time, he suddenly raised his head and stared at Yu Qianqiu and said, "Yu Qianqiu, tell me honestly, are you sure we can stay safe and sound in the Divine Ruin Realm? As far as I know, the Divine Ruin Realm is also a place with an owner." Yu Qianqiu was startled. He shook his head and said, "I really can't guarantee that. I'm not familiar with the situation in the Divine Ruin Realm, but there shouldn't be any danger in the short term where we are temporarily staying. Since that's the case, I still have to go out and meet up with Nie Xiaoqian and the others." De Ming Luan frowned and said, "People who don't think far ahead will have immediate worries. You can't treat everything with hope, but you have to fight for it. Currently, Jin Tai and Bai Qi haven't completely failed. No one knows what the final outcome will be. If Jin Tai makes a comeback, then my position in the Immortal Palace will become more and more stable. At that time, anyone in the immortal world who wants to touch you will have to think twice. If Jin Tai and Bai Qi completely fail, it won't be too late for me to return. In short, now is not the time to give up so easily. Even if you're not in the immortal palace, we can still live well. We don't need you to take care of us. Wei Chuanqiu said snappily. Deming Luan smiled faintly and said, I didn't say how to take care of you. Just treat it as leaving a way out for you to play a role at a critical moment. Saying that, he turned to look at Yu Qianqiu and said, Yu Qianqiu, quickly send me out. If I take too long, it will arouse their suspicions. Wei Chuanqiu still wanted to say something, but Yun Peng pulled him back and shook his head slightly, indicating that there was no point in arguing. Yu Qianqiu looked at both sides and saw that it was useless to continue persuading them. He immediately sighed and said, Then I'll go with you. With me by your side, if there's any danger, I can bring you back at any time. Saying that, he returned to Niu Yid's appearance. Doing this was tantamount to taking the same risk as the Deming Luan, but relatively speaking, if he could bring the Deming Luan back at any time, then the Deming Luan's safety would be greatly increased. Hearing this, Yun Peng and Wei Chuanqiu looked at Yu Qianqiu in unison. Their hearts were filled with gratitude, but they didn't show it. The Deming Luan still wanted to refuse, but Yu Qianqiu had already pulled him away and disappeared into the cave. When the two of them returned to the netherworld through the passageway between the two worlds, they found that there was no one outside. They didn't know where Nie Xiaoqian and the others had gone. While they were looking at each other, Nie Xiaoqian and the others flashed out from hiding on both sides, showing how careful these people were. Deming Luan, why were you gone for so long? Nie Xiaoqian's eyes flashed as she focused on Yu Qianqiu, who was standing next to the Deming Luan. Next to her, Qingyang looked at Yu Qianqiu with a slightly suspicious gaze. Chief Steward, please don't be so suspicious. This subordinate has received some bad news and is waiting for Chief Steward to make a decision. The Deming Luan quickly told them about Wu Xiong's betrayal and the attack on the Netherworld Royal Palace. After hearing this, everyone revealed a shocked expression. Nie Xiaoqian coldly snorted and said, I was wondering why Wu Xiong didn't escape with us. So he was with them. No wonder the immortal emperor felt that something was wrong with him and asked me to secretly send people to investigate him. It's a pity that he took the initiative. Otherwise he would be begging for death. What do we do now? Do we still rush to the Netherworld Royal Palace? The Deming Luan asked. Then what do you think we should do? Nie Xiaoqian slightly sighed and said, Even if the Netherworld Royal Palace is really attacked, we still have to find a way to meet up with the immortal emperor. If we follow the immortal emperor, we might have another way out. Otherwise, with just the few of us, I'm afraid we won't be able to survive. Everyone was silent. Who would have thought that the sky would change so suddenly? Nie Xiaoqian waved her hand and said, Let's go to the Netherworld Royal Palace. Along the way we'll act according to the situation. Under the dark blue sky, the sounds of battle could be heard. Around the main peak of the Minghuang Mountain, which was surrounded by 5 peaks, there were as many people as ants fighting each other. Violent explosions could be heard continuously. Flashes of light flew everywhere and blood and flesh flew everywhere. Screams of pain could be heard continuously. Amidst the rolling dark clouds in the sky, huge green snakes that were as thick as dragons opened their bloody mouths and launched sneak attacks on people who flew by at lightning speed, biting them to death and swallowing them into their stomachs. On the ground, there were all kinds of ferocious monsters colliding with each other. Some had huge bodies, some had sharp fangs, and some had thick scales. They fought and tore at each other, not stopping until one of them was dead. Around the Minghuang Mountain, there were chaotic battles and rivers of blood. The pungent smell of blood stimulated the ferocious monsters, causing them to roar loudly and become more and more restless. Countless black-armored soldiers and all kinds of ferocious-looking monsters attacked the Minghuang Mountain from all directions. The Minghuang Mountain was also filled with people who were defending against the enemies. Soldiers in silver, purple, blue and yellow armors were mixed together in battle formations. It looked messy, but in fact it was orderly. The main peak of Minghuang Mountain was protected by a dazzling white light shield. 4 men in silver, purple, blue and yellow armors stood on top of the shield, back to back, watching the battle around them. These 4 people were the 4 underworld generals under the command of the Emperor of the Underworld, Bai Qi. They were the silver-armored Thousand Soldiers, the purple-armored Proud Soldiers, the blue-armored Heavenly Soldiers and the yellow-armored Victorious Soldiers. Seeing the rebel army launching an even more ferocious attack, the blue-armored Heavenly Soldier waved his hand and shouted angrily, "Fire the soul-slaying bows!" The blue-armored soldiers, who were mixed with the other 3 armies, pulled their bowstrings together. In an instant, hundreds of thousands of arrowheads shining with blue light shot out in all directions, and the sound of bowstrings being pulled rang out. Swish, swish. Countless blue lines shot out in all directions, illuminating this part of the world. For a moment, the sky was filled with horrifying screams. There was nowhere to hide from the rain of arrows. Even if they managed to dodge one arrow, they wouldn't be able to dodge the countless arrows. They didn't know what these arrows were made of, but they could easily break through the protective energies. Regardless of whether the depth of the arrows was fatal or not, as long as they were hit by the arrows, their bodies would immediately emit black smoke, and their eyes would roll back as they fell to the ground. Wave after wave of arrows were shot out, and the people in the sky kept falling. The people on the ground fell like wheat being reaped. The attackers couldn't get close at all. If there was a fish that slipped through the net or an expert that barged in and launched a fierce attack, the yellow-armored soldier would immediately put together the shield in his hand and burst out a towering yellow pillar of light to counteract the fierce attack. The purple-armored soldier would immediately brandish his huge sickle to kill. Often, several sickles would hook onto a person at the same time, tearing them apart or cutting them into pieces. Chapter 1101. Countless soldiers in white armor, each holding a halberd, swept across the Minghuang mountain like a whirlwind. Wherever there were strong enemies, they would come to help. They waved their halberds and swore to defend the Minghuang mountain with their lives. The whole Minghuang mountain was a combination of long-range and short-range attacks. It was as solid as an iron bucket. Wave after wave of fierce attacks were repelled. Just as the attackers retreated in fear, they saw countless broken limbs falling down from the Minghuang mountain. Corpses piled up at the foot of the mountain. Blood flowed everywhere, and the thick smell of blood filled the air. Some bloodthirsty monsters couldn't bear to give up on the delicious food in front of them. They didn't retreat with the troops. Instead, they lay on the piles of corpses and ate them. Immediately, dozens of blue lights shot out from the mountain. The monsters couldn't dodge in time. After being hit by the arrows, they fell down with black smoke rising from their bodies, becoming one of the piles of corpses. In the distance, many forces belonging to the Minghuang Palace knew that someone was attacking the Minghuang Palace. Therefore, they came from all over the underworld to help the king. The rebellious army of Dark Nether had also gathered a large number of troops from all directions. Their numbers and strength were obviously superior to the troops sent to rescue the emperor. Both sides were engaged in a fierce battle in the surroundings of the Minghuang mountain. Standing on the white light shield, the silver-armored thousand soldiers looked down at the Minghuang mountain. Seeing that another attack had been repelled, he said solemnly, "Something is wrong. It doesn't look like the Blackpool Bitch's force is rebelling. There are other forces adding fuel to the fire. Immediately send a message to the army stationed in the Endless Horizon to bring all the Purgatory army here." The other three were slightly shocked. The purple-armored Ao Jun said, "I'm afraid this is not appropriate. The Purgatory army needs to suppress the countless prisoners in the Endless Horizon. If the army brings all the Purgatory army here, once the prisoners escape, they will become a great threat to the Minghuang Palace. You should know that all the prisoners in the Endless Horizon hate the Minghuang Palace to the core." The silver-armored thousand soldiers took a deep breath of the thick smell of blood in the air and shouted coldly, "Kill! Let the army execute all the prisoners immediately." "Execute all the prisoners?" The three of them exclaimed in shock at the same time. After so many years, there were already over 100 million prisoners imprisoned in the Endless Horizon. What did it mean to kill all of them? Huang Jia Xingjun sucked in a breath of cold air and said, "There are nearly 100 million prisoners imprisoned in the Endless Horizon." Now that the other party had suddenly thrown out these heads, their identity was self-evident. Half of the man's face was hidden under the large bamboo hat and he did not answer. He suddenly raised the staff in his hand and shook it. On the pumpkin-shaped head of the staff that was protected by 9 large rings, dozens of earrings in the 9 large rings rang. Ding-ling-dang-lang. The crisp sound of the earrings resounded through heaven and earth. Immediately, 9 pitch-black whirlwinds swayed out from the head of the staff and flew into the night sky that was filled with the smell of blood. The 9 whirlwinds, which were originally only the size of a fist, suddenly expanded, forming 9 black tornadoes that connected the heavens and the earth. In an instant, heaven and earth changed color, and the tornadoes twisted and dragged on the ground, howling as they surrounded the Minghuang mountain. The people fighting on the ground didn't care whether they were friend or foe. As long as they got close to the 9 black whirlwinds, they would be sucked in by a powerful suction force. As long as they were swallowed, they would scream and die. The 9 black tornadoes were like scavengers. Wherever they went, the densely packed crowd and corpses were immediately cleaned up. Everyone was so frightened that they all retreated far away, leaving clear marks on the ground as they passed. In just a short while, the 9 black tornadoes surrounded the Minghuang mountain from all directions. The soldiers all over the mountain couldn't help but look at each other in horror at the sight of the terrifying tornadoes. They didn't know how to deal with them. A huge purple scythe appeared in the hands of the proud purple-armored soldier. A wide blue bow appeared in the hands of the blue-armored soldier. A shield covered with inscriptions appeared in the hands of the victorious yellow-armored soldier, and a long-handled broadsword appeared in the hands of the victorious yellow-armored soldier. All of them looked very serious. Before the 9 black whirlwinds could reach the foot of the mountain, the silver-armored soldier waved his halberd and roared, "Attack the target!" The other 3 also roared, "Attack!" In an instant, countless blue arrows were shot toward the 9 whirlwinds. Yellow light burst into the sky, trying to stop the approaching whirlwinds. White light and purple scythe shadows burst forth, but they seemed to have no effect on the 9 black whirlwinds. The whirlwinds didn't stop at all. Ding-ling-dang-lang. The earrings on the staff rang again, and the countless blue arrows that had been swallowed by the tornado suddenly shot back. Instantly, a large number of soldiers on Minghuang Mountain fell to the ground. The tornado stepped onto the Minghuang Mountain almost instantaneously, and with a series of clanging sounds, 9 tornadoes circled around the entire Minghuang Mountain from the foot of the mountain, forming a formation that spiraled upward. The desperate resistance of the soldiers on the mountain had no effect. Wherever the whirlwinds passed, they were easily sucked in and devoured. Immediately, the Minghuang Mountain experienced a catastrophe that hadn't been seen for a long time. Miserable screams rang out one after another. Despite the cruelty of the situation, none of the soldiers in the 4-colored armor tried to escape. In their desperate resistance, they could only watch helplessly as they were swallowed up by the whirlwinds. The silver-armored soldier and the other 3 glared at them. These were their trusted disciples who had followed them for many years. Chapter 1102. Seeing the 9 spiraling tornadoes devouring the lives of the soldiers on the mountain, Lady Blackpool, who stood on the snake's head and watched silently, suddenly giggled and said, "1,000 soldiers. If the 4 of you kneel down and submit to me, I will consider letting you go." Shameless bitch. You are just a bitch who flatters the Emperor of Hell. You are not worthy of us submitting to you. Silver Armor 1,000 soldiers waved his halberd and shouted angrily. Lady Blackpool snorted coldly and turned to the man in the bamboo hat behind her. She gritted her teeth and said, "Big brother. We must capture this person alive. I will make him suffer a fate worse than death. Brothers, let's break it together." Silver Armor 1,000 soldiers pointed his halberd at the spiraling tornadoes. The 3 of them responded in unison, "We will obey. Let's go." Silver Armor 1,000 soldiers rushed out with his halberd in hand. The 3 of them followed without hesitation. The 4 of them rushed to one of the tornadoes and attacked at the same time. 4 rays of light that shook the heavens and the earth shot out together. Boom. The air vibrated violently and instantly shattered the tornado. However, the wind was shapeless and the clouds were shapeless. The clanking sound from the earrings of the monk's staff sounded again. The scattered tornado instantly condensed and formed again. The happy expressions on the 4 of their faces froze. Ding-ling-dang-lang, the sound of the monk's staff seemed to contain an inexhaustible amount of magic. The tornado suddenly split into 4 and surrounded the 4 of them. Then, the tornado once again formed into a tornado, wrapping the 4 of them in the eye of the tornado. The eye of the tornado was filled with great pressure. At the same time, countless tangible wind blades were condensed and attacked the 4 of them. Not good. Silver Armor 1,000 soldiers used all his strength to strike with his halberd. The force was instantly dissipated by the spinning tornado. He immediately shouted, "Hurry, let's work together and open a way out." The wind whistled past their ears, and it was almost impossible to hear what they were saying to each other. However, the 4 of them could be said to be of one mind, and they simultaneously attacked in the same direction. Hong! 4 powerful rays of light instantly broke open a gap, and the 4 of them immediately teleported out. Almost at the same time that the 4 of them left, the gap closed. The 4 of them quickly returned to the top of the mountain. Looking at the tornado that continued to spiral towards the top of the mountain, then looking at their subordinates that were constantly being devoured, a trace of sorrow flashed across their faces. It wasn't that they didn't want to risk their lives, but they simply couldn't do anything about this strange tornado. They had a feeling of helplessness as if they had nowhere to use their strength. "We can't let our brothers die in vain," Huang Jiashengzhun cried out in sorrow. Silver-armored 1,000 soldiers' bones creaked, knowing that they couldn't hold the Minghuang mountain for much longer. Just as he was about to order everyone to retreat, a furious roar came from the distance. How dare you? This voice was so familiar. The four of them shuddered, their faces full of joy. The Emperor of the Underworld is back, the silver-armored soldier exclaimed. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound, only to see a white light and a golden glow cutting through the night sky. Jintai, help me kill these traitors. The angry roar resounded through the sky again. The white light suddenly shot out a black light toward the ground. The black light instantly expanded in the shape of a fan. The light engulfed and strangled the crowd below. Suddenly there was a series of screams. Countless people were turned into ashes under the rotating strangulation of the black light. The Emperor of the Underworld is back. Someone shouted in fear. The name, Emperor of the Underworld, was a very powerful deterrent in the underworld. Countless people immediately fled without a care in the world. At the same time, a golden rod instantly grew to several hundred meters long. It spun as it was tossed out. It rushed into the crowd below and began to hit them without restraint. Amidst the rumbling sounds, screams rose and fell. People fled in all directions, unable to resist. The two streaks of light, one golden and one white, killed countless people in an instant. The two of them passed through the tornadoes and landed on the white barrier. The silver-armored soldier and the other three bowed in unison and said, "Greetings, Emperor of the Underworld, greetings, immortal Emperor." Bai Qi waved his hand and didn't pay attention to the four of them. He looked around at the 9 tornadoes with a gloomy expression. Listening to the incessant screams and seeing so many core forces of the Immortal Palace rapidly dying, Jintai's expression changed even more. Now that his Immortal Palace's forces had collapsed, he needed to borrow Bai Qi's forces to rebuild the immortal world. If he allowed Bai Qi's forces to collapse as well, he wouldn't have any forces left to take control of the immortal world. You dare to show off your insignificant skills here? See how I break it? Jintai shouted and spat out golden powder from his mouth. The powder turned into 9 golden clouds and rushed towards the 9 tornadoes. In an instant, they were all swallowed by the tornadoes, and the black tornadoes turned into a dark golden color in the blink of an eye. The dark golden light flashed in the tornadoes and the 9 tornadoes slowed down in an instant. The golden powder inside was spinning in the opposite direction to counteract the speed of the tornadoes. The power of the tornadoes lay in their rotation. Since they couldn't rotate anymore, they naturally couldn't become tornadoes and wouldn't have any destructive power. In the blink of an eye, the 9 tornadoes were annihilated, leaving only 9 golden dragons that connected the heaven and earth. Jintai opened his mouth and sucked the 9 golden dragons back into his stomach. It was a miraculous feat. Everyone on the mountain looked at Jintai with cold eyes. An immortal emperor was indeed an immortal emperor. Even the 4 underworld generals couldn't break it, but he just opened his mouth and broke it. The arrival of the Emperor of the Underworld and the Immortal Emperor gave the majority of the people on the mountain a sense of relief. Bai Qi glanced at Jintai and didn't expect him to do this. Jintai expressionlessly looked at the head of the giant snake in the sky and said, "I didn't expect someone in the underworld to know the wind manipulation technique. There was one in the immortal realm, but it was sealed by me." In front of the people, he still acted like an emperor and didn't feel like a stray dog. He turned to Bai Qi and asked, "Bai Qi, how did you do it? Hey Qi, this little bitch has been nurtured by you for a long time, but she still dares to bite you, her master. I told you to give her to me, but you didn't want to do it. Now you have raised a tiger and brought disaster to yourself." Bai Qi coldly stared at Madame He Qi and shouted, "Bitch, come over here and kneel." His shout scared many people. The power of the Emperor of the Underworld had seeped into their bones. Many soldiers of the army of the Underworld were already running away quietly. Even the Madame of Blackpool, who had been flattered by the Underworld Emperor for a long time, couldn't help but tremble in fear when she heard Bai Qi's stern shout. She almost knelt down and begged for mercy. However, it was just a momentary illusion. She had been preparing for this day for so many years. Madame He Qi took a deep breath and giggled at Bai Qi, "Your Majesty, the Emperor of the Underworld? How come this title is so hard to pronounce? Well, you joined hands with Jintai in the immortal realm, but you were defeated by the sect master of the Heartless Palace, Wang Qing. What right do you have to be the Emperor of the Underworld? Bai Qi, do you think you are qualified to control the Underworld Palace and enjoy the honor of the Emperor of the Underworld? Bitch, I will give you one last chance. Otherwise, you will be tortured for the rest of your life." Bai Qi said word by word, "Kneel down and accept your punishment." Haha. Madame He Qi suddenly laughed seductively, "Bai Qi, if you kneel down and submit to me, I definitely won't kill you. I'll definitely spare your life and let you be my exclusive male pet." No matter if I'm in the netherworld, the human world, or the immortal world, I'll keep you by my side to serve me. What do you think? Bai Qi was so angry that he laughed. Good. 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 You're so daring. How dare you be so presumptuous in front of me? Bai Qi. Madame Hei Qi suddenly interrupted him. She recovered her cold and noble expression and said indifferently, "Hand over the obsidian hell light mirror, give up the throne of the emperor of the underworld and surrender to me. Otherwise today will be the day you die." You want to be the emperor of the underworld? Do you think you are qualified? Bai Qi slowly raised the obsidian underworld light mirror in his hand and asked. Jin Tai glanced at it. There was a sword mark left by the unmoved sword drawing style, but on the way here, the two of them found that the sword mark had disappeared. It was very magical. Bai Qi. It seems that this bitch has found a new backer. Otherwise she would not dare to be so presumptuous. Jin Tai looked at the man in the bamboo hat standing between the horns of the giant snake in the air. He found that the man had the cultivation of the last stage of the emperor of the underworld. He snorted coldly, wearing a bamboo hat hiding your head and tail. Are you afraid to meet people? The silver-armored soldiers on the side quickly cupped their hands and reported to Bai Qi, who was also paying attention to the man, Emperor of the Underworld. This man is the king of the Black Mountain. Bai Qi and Jin Tai looked at each other. The man in the bamboo hat slowly took off the bamboo hat on his head and revealed his original appearance. He looked at Jin Tai with sharp eyes and said indifferently, "Jin Tai, we finally meet again." Jin Tai was startled when he saw the man's face. After a while he said in surprise, "You are Wu Feng? You are the king of the Black Mountain?" Wu and He agreed. "The reason why I hid my name was because of you." The king of the Black Mountain, Wu Feng, said indifferently. Wu Feng. The sect master Wu Feng of the number 1 sect in the immortal realm, the wind evolution sect that you destroyed? Bai Qi also asked Jin Tai in surprise. Jin Tai didn't reply to Bai Qi. He looked at the king of the Black Mountain, Wu Feng, and said, "You became a meditation cultivator after you died? I was wondering why the Imperial Wind technique looked so familiar. But it is amazing that you can cultivate to the last stage of the Emperor of the Underworld in these years." The king of the Black Mountain, Wu Feng, said indifferently, "It is nothing amazing. It is only because I cultivated the Imperial Wind technique that I was fortunate enough to devour a wind spirit. So after you killed me, I was able to maintain my cultivation and consciousness. However, I can't compare to you. I can't restore the flesh and blood body of the immortal realm. I can only turn to the underworld and cultivate again. Jin Tai, you are a metal spirit. I believe you know the secret better than anyone." "You devoured a wind spirit?" Jin Tai's face was dark. Bai Qi looked at Jin Tai in surprise and said, "You are a metal spirit." The king of the Black Mountain, Wu Feng, continued to speak indifferently. "Before this, I couldn't be sure if you were a metal spirit or not. But I received news that after my son, Wang Qing, destroyed your flesh and blood body, you were able to reform it. Only then did I confirm that you are a metal spirit. It is laughable that you shamelessly boasted about cultivating an indestructible golden body. What a joke." Chapter 1103. Everyone turned to look at Jin Tai. Most of them had a look of confusion in their eyes. They didn't know what the metal spirit and wind spirit were, but those like Bai Qi who knew were all shocked. However, they were even more shocked that Wang Qing was the son of King Heishan. "Wang Qing is your son. How is that possible?" Jin Tai said with a gloomy face. "Nothing is impossible. Jin Tai's despicable and shameless personality forced me to prepare myself. After the wind spread sect experienced the calamity of destruction, I, Wu Feng, left behind 2 bloodlines in the immortal world. Other than Wang Qing, Wu Xiong is also my son." Recalling the past, the king of the Black Mountain, Wu Feng, could not help but sigh. "It's precisely because of the huge financial resources I plundered from the netherworld that the Heartless Palace created by Wang Qing could reach where it is today, and that Wu Xiong could become the great commander of the Immortal Palace's external affairs." Wu Xiong? No wonder it really was a deliberate scheme. Jin Tai sneered. "Jin Tai, today is the day you end the Wu family." Madame Blackpool gritted her teeth and stared at Jin Tai angrily. Jin Tai snorted and stared at her coldly. "Who are you in the Wu family?" Madame Blackpool said word by word, "Wu Yunfang." Jin Tai said, "I remember you. The Wind Development Sect did have such a person. However, it was too long ago. If I remember correctly, you weren't as beautiful as you are now. Otherwise, I would have taken you in as a concubine in the Immortal Palace. You wouldn't have the chance to be pampered by Bai Qi. You also became a meditation cultivator. Did you devour some wind spirit?" Because I didn't devour the wind spirit, I couldn't condense a nether body and recover my original appearance. If Big Brother didn't use the wind spirit to protect my soul and find a nether body to possess, I wouldn't have the chance to witness your retribution. Madame Blackpool said angrily. You weren't very pretty in your previous life, and even after you died, you still needed to find a beautiful body double. Women really do love to be beautiful. You should be thanking me, otherwise how could you have the chance to become so beautiful? Kim Tai laughed loudly, then turned to look at Bai Qi with a strange expression and said, Bai Qi, I find it strange. Although you are the emperor of the underworld, the king of the Black Mountain is your brother-in-law. Your brother-in-law colluded with your woman to rebel against you. What is going on? Bai Qi glanced at him and coldly said, You shut up. This slut is just a toy for me to vent my anger on. How can a piece of trash like her, who has been ridden by thousands and slept with tens of thousands, be worthy of being my woman? That's true. Jean Tai nodded his head seriously. Madame Blackpool was so angry that her body trembled. Big Brother. Help me catch him alive, help me catch him alive. Whoosh. The king of the Black Mountain staff paused for a moment, then he looked down and said, The emperor of the underworld and the immortal emperor have fallen to the point of using words. This means that they have reached the end of the road. Why do you care about it? Bai Qi. Hand over the obsidian hell light mirror, and I will spare your life. Bai Qi nodded silently. Both of you are eager to get the obsidian hell light mirror, so it seems that you already know the secret of the mirror. I can give it to you, but both of you want it, so who should I give it to? Kim Tai's eyes flickered as he looked at the mirror in his hand, trying to figure out the secret hidden within. Bai Qi. You don't need to sow discord between us. Madame Blackpool said disdainfully, I have no intention of fighting for power, I just want to be free and unfettered. Think about it, the emperor of the underworld will be my brother, and the immortal emperor of the immortal world will be my nephew. Where in the three realms won't I be free? The obsidian hell light mirror will naturally be given to my big brother. As soon as this was said, Kim Tai laughed wildly. After a while he said sternly, I am still here. Who in the immortal world dares to call himself an emperor? The immortal world has my son Wang Qing guarding it. Is there still a place for a stray dog like you? The king of the Black Mountain Wu Feng said indifferently, Today is the day you die. Ah, Wu Feng, I could kill you back then so I can still take care of you now. Kim Tai pointed at the two siblings with a ferocious expression. I was just worrying about how to deal with that madman Wang Qing. I didn't expect you two to deliver yourselves to me. I can capture you and use you as a hostage to force Wang Qing to submit. As he spoke, an illusory golden hand rushed out from the top of Kim Tai's head. With a whoosh, it grabbed the two siblings standing on the snake's head with lightning speed, instantly dispersing the dark clouds in the sky. Madame Blackpool was shocked. She teleported behind her brother. The king of the Black Mountain waved his staff casually. With a whoosh, a huge shadow appeared and struck forward like a pillar supporting the heavens. With a loud bang, a huge shockwave dispersed the dark clouds in the sky. The countless green snakes hidden in the dark clouds were revealed on the spot and scattered in all directions in fear. The golden hand shadow was instantly destroyed by the staff shadow. Kim Tai's body swayed slightly as he looked at the staff in the Black Mountain King's hand with a shocked expression. Bai Qi was also slightly shocked. He shone the obsidian hell light mirror in his hand towards the sky. Thousands of black lights burst out, wanting to strangle the two siblings in the sky in one fell swoop. The illusory huge staff shadow disappeared. Ding ling dang lang sounded hurriedly like the sound of a Sanskrit mantra resounding through the world. The staff in the Black Mountain King's hand stirred in the direction of the Minghuang Mountain. A dark whirlwind erupted from the tip of the staff and expanded. The black light shot by the obsidian hell light mirror was instantly absorbed by the dark whirlwind. At the same time, a powerful suction force was dragging the obsidian hell light mirror in Bai Qi's hand. The more he tried to use the black light to resist, the stronger the suction force became. It was as if the suction force was trying to take away his treasure. Bai Qi was shocked. He forcefully stopped the black light shot out from the mirror and quickly put away the obsidian hell light mirror. Kim Tai could naturally see that something was wrong. He stared at the sky and said in a deep voice, What a powerful treasure. It shouldn't be something unknown, but I've never heard of it. Bai Qi, have you heard of it? When did such a treasure appear in the three realms? I can see that he hasn't mastered it yet. It seems like he can't fully unleash the treasure's power. Bai Qi looked at the sky and shook his head in doubt, indicating that he didn't know either. The Black Mountain King in the sky was relieved after defeating their attacks. He laughed and said, This treasure is an ancient god's treasure left in the Netherworld Palace by the coiling dragon god after he killed an ancient god called the Wind God. It's called the Wind God's Staff. Those who don't have the wind attribute can't use it. I happen to get it. This is heaven's will. Kim Tai. I bet you didn't even dream that I would get the ancient god's treasure. Ah. Today is the day you die. The monk's staff in his hand clanked and dozens of earrings bounced. The dark whirlwind abruptly expanded into a sky-covering net, directly wrapping the entire Minghuang mountain in it. The sky-coiling whirlwind twisted and spun rapidly, changing the color of the sky and filling the entire space with whistling noises. Madame Blackpool, who was standing on the snake's head, took a few steps forward. She held one of the snake's horns and looked down at the Minghuang mountain that was covered by the whirlwind. She gritted her teeth and said, "Brother, leave Bai Qi alive for me to vent my anger." The Black Mountain King Wu Feng glanced at her and frowned slightly. However, he didn't say anything. He retracted the staff in his hand and put the end of the staff on the snake's head. The dozens of earrings on the 9 arcs of the staff kept spinning on their own. It was very strange. The people who were trapped on the Minghuang mountain turned pale with fright. It was as if they were trapped in endless darkness. The strong wind wrapped around them like sharp blades. The strong tearing force instantly pulled many people into it. Countless screams sounded. Those who were pulled into it were cut into pieces in the blink of an eye. Not even their bones could be seen. The soil and stones on the mountain were blown up like meteors, and there were rumbling sounds everywhere, forcing everyone to release their protective aura to resist. However, this increased the wind resistance, making it even more difficult to resist the strong wind. Those whose cultivation was not strong enough were swept away by the strong wind, leaving only screams in the whistling and ear-piercing hurricane. In just a few moments, almost all the people on the mountain were killed. Seeing this, Bai Qi's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. These were his trusted subordinates, whom he had spent countless years training. Suddenly, he lost his elegant demeanor. He used all his strength to attack the approaching wind. Jin Tai and the others also attacked with all their strength. However, the treasures left behind by the ancient god were not to be underestimated. The endless power made their attacks disappear like clay oxen in the sea. They couldn't see any effect. Instead, they tended to increase the power of the wind. Jin Tai, didn't you say that the wind-riding art was a small trick? Where is the way to break it? Bai Qi turned around and shouted angrily. Jin Tai looked at the approaching wind and replied angrily, "This is not a normal wind-riding art. It is the power of the wind god magic treasure. How can I break it?" Huang Jia, who had lost all his subordinates, shouted angrily, "Your subordinate will open the way for the emperor of the underworld." The shield in his hand emitted a dazzling light, and he rushed toward the approaching wind with the shield. "Xingjun, come back. You can't stop it." Bai Qi reached out his hand and roared. His face was distorted. "Xingjun! Xingjun! Xingjun!" Silver-armored 1,000 soldiers and the others cried out involuntarily. They could only watch as Huang Jia, who was protected by a faint yellow light, desperately tried to resist the wind. However, the power of the wind was too strong. It was so strong that even Bai Qi and Jin Tai didn't dare to act rashly. How could he resist it? He resisted for a while in the strong wind. The yellow light on the shield became weaker and weaker. In the blink of an eye, it was completely blown away and the shield was forcibly blown away. Without the protection of the treasure, Xingjun was blown away like a thin piece of paper. He didn't even have time to scream before he was torn to pieces in front of everyone. He couldn't even keep his life, let alone open the way for the emperor of the underworld. Before the crowd had time to grieve, Jin Tai suddenly slapped his forehead and said, "There is change." The golden cloud rod in his hand suddenly grew bigger and bigger like a pillar supporting the sky. He stabbed directly into the sky. In the blink of an eye, the pillar that was several meters in diameter pierced through the wind and pierced the sky. A rapid sound of metal colliding came from the golden pillar. Chapter 1104. Everyone looked up and saw that the golden pillar had already started to be scratched by the fierce wind, and the entire pillar was also shaking violently. Jin Tai pressed his palm on the golden pillar, and a big hole appeared on the pillar. "Let's go. My golden cloud rod can't hold on for long." As soon as Kinte finished speaking, he had already turned into a golden light and flashed into the hole in the pillar. Bai Qi and the others followed closely behind. After entering, they found that the pillar was completely empty, forming an empty tube from the bottom to the top. They quickly followed the violently shaking tube and flashed out. As soon as they dashed out from the top of the pillar, they saw Jin Tai grab the golden pillar. The golden pillars shrunk quickly and returned to his hand from the center of the hurricane. They had escaped from the hurricane. Seeing what Jintai did, Bai Qi was shocked. He grabbed Jintai's clothes and shouted angrily, "What are you doing? More than 1,000 of my men haven't come out yet. Are you crazy?" Jintai pushed him away with his elbow. He picked up the battered golden cloud rod and said harshly, "The golden cloud rod can't hold on for long. It is already difficult for us to come out. We don't have time to wait for more than 1,000 of your men to escape." "Then why didn't you use it to escape earlier? Xuanhuan didn't have to die for nothing." Bai Qi, who was about to lose his mind, was pulled back by the silver-armored army and the others. They all advised him that as long as they could protect the emperor of the underworld, they would have a chance to avenge Xuanhuan. "If it weren't for Xuanhuan's death, I wouldn't have thought of using this method to escape. His death was worth it. Otherwise we would all die together." Jintai looked at the angry Bai Qi and snorted coldly, "Now is not the time for you to show mercy. We don't have a way to break the power of the divine wind staff yet. If we don't leave now, we won't be able to. If you don't leave, I will." On top of the giant snake's head that was floating in the air, Lady Blackpool was looking at the tornado that connected the sky and the earth. She praised her brother in amazement. The king of the Black Mountain, on the other hand, was looking at the tornado with a serious gaze. He suddenly raised his head and looked at the sky above the tornado. He said in a deep voice, "Not good. They actually managed to escape." Madame Blackpool was shocked. "What?" With a swoosh, the monk's staff in the hand of the king of the Black Mountain turned into a stream of light and shot into the sky. In the blink of an eye, it had turned into a huge fellow that was several thousand feet tall, striking toward the top of the tornado with a force that could split the heavens and the earth. With such power, the people high up in the sky naturally noticed it as well. Jintai was the first to exclaim, "Not good. Let's go." Bai Qi and the others also teleported in a panic. A few streams of light quickly disappeared into the horizon. The staff missed its target, and the huge shadow of the staff floated in the air. Lady Blackpool said in surprise, "Big brother." The king of the Black Mountain looked at the sky and sighed. "They still managed to escape. Then why aren't you chasing after them?" Madame Blackpool said anxiously. The king of the Black Mountain shook his head and smiled bitterly, "It's useless. The reason I can defeat them is because of the power of the divine wind staff. In terms of cultivation, I'm far inferior to Bai Qi and Jintai, and in terms of speed, I'm also inferior to them. So, Wang Qing is still a little too impatient. I've already said that there's no need to rush. I'll wait until I understand more of the divine wind staff's abilities before I make a move. At that time, victory will be within my grasp. How can I let them escape and leave behind future troubles?" You can't blame Wang Qing for this. It is said that he has already noticed that Jintai is going to attack the Heartless Palace. He can't just sit there and wait for his death, so he naturally has to fight back. Even though she said that, Madame Blackpool's expression was somewhat regretful. After all, she had prepared for so many years, but in the end, she still had regrets. She was somewhat unwilling to accept this. He noticed that Jintai is going to attack him? Then why didn't we receive any news about it? This brat is looking down on me more and more. He didn't even discuss with me beforehand. The king of the Black Mountain's tone was somewhat heavy. I suspect that Wu Xiong's reckless actions aroused Jintai's suspicions. As for the specifics, it won't be too late to ask Wang Qing when we meet. As for why he didn't discuss it with you, I'm afraid. Madame Blackpool hesitated for a moment and said in a low voice, "I'm afraid it has something to do with the fact that you forced him to sever his relationship and remember his hatred. Is it wrong for me to ask him to take revenge for his mother? What else in the world is more important than avenging his parents? If I didn't force him to cultivate wholeheartedly, he wouldn't be able to defeat Jintai and Bai Qi and achieve such a glorious achievement today." The king of the Black Mountain's tone was stern. "If you can't forget your wife, why can't he do the same to his wife?" Madame Blackpool's words were in her mouth. Only she knew what she was saying, so she didn't dare to let her brother hear it. The siblings were being suspicious. Perhaps when they met up with Wang Qing, they would realize that the reason why things turned out like this was that Yu Qianqiu, who was not well known but was like a sh*t stirrer, played a big role in it. They didn't know if such a small character like him had harmed Jintai and Bai Qi or helped them. In short, he had caused the things that were about to happen to deviate from the original track. After the king of the Black Mountain calmed down, he grabbed at the sky and the whirlwind immediately stopped. The whirlwind turned into a ball of black wind and went back into the giant staff that was floating in the air. The towering Minghuang Mountain seemed to have lost half of its original size and looked straight and steep. The white light shield that was protecting the Minghuang Palace on the main peak was a little dim. The giant staff that was floating in the air plunged down like an avalanche. Boom! The ground shook and the white light shield collapsed instantly. The Minghuang Palace suddenly appeared in front of everyone. The giant staff then turned back into the original tin staff and flashed back to the King of the Black Mountain's hand. Madame Blackpool's eyes lit up when she saw the Minghuang Palace on the main peak. She waved her sleeves and pointed at the Minghuang Palace. The giant snake under her feet let out a deafening roar and carried the two of them to the Minghuang Palace quickly. Before they reached the top of the mountain, Madame Blackpool couldn't wait to get down. The King of the Black Mountain waved his hand, and a bald man in black clothes flashed over. His bald head was shiny and his big eyes had no eyebrows. A ferocious glint could be seen in his eyes. He cupped his hands and said in a hoarse voice, "My king! Send my order to search for the whereabouts of Bai Qi Jintai and the others. Report to me as soon as you have any definite information." The King of the Black Mountain yelled. The bald man in black clothes replied respectfully, "Yes," and left quickly. The Emperor of the Underworld was defeated, and the morale of the people was disrupted. The troops who came to rescue the Emperor from all directions either surrendered or ran away. Another fierce battle ensued. However, the outcome had been determined. Unless the Emperor of the Underworld came back again, he wouldn't be able to cause any more trouble. In the deep wood forest, Madame Blackpool's hysterical laughter suddenly came from the small attic where the Emperor of the Underworld lived. She laughed so happily. When the King of the Black Mountain heard the laughter and dashed in, Madame Blackpool was already lying on the rocking chair by the window. Her eyes were slightly closed and she rocked the chair leisurely with a smile on her face. She murmured, "Bai Qi, help me massage my feet." The King of the Black Mountain was startled by her words. He looked around quickly but he didn't find Bai Qi. After a while, he realized that his younger sister was daydreaming. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Is this the building where Bai Qi lives? He glanced at the arrangement of the desk and the bookshelf full of scrolls. Unexpectedly, Madame Blackpool didn't answer his question with her eyes closed. "Big brother. The deep wood forest and this attic belong to me. You can handle the rest as you see fit." She rocked on the chair with a comfortable expression on her face. The King of the Black Mountain was speechless as he put away his staff. He walked to the desk and saw a scroll on it. He pushed it away and rolled it on the table. The scroll showed a scene of a green-robed elder fighting against 4 netherworld generals and Bai Qi alone. The painting was so exquisite and realistic that even the King of the Black Mountain couldn't help but reveal an expression of admiration. He said, "It seems that this Bai Qi who always dresses like a scholar is not just pretending to be an elegant person. The standard of the painting is quite high. If I can catch him and make him my male toy, it would be good to keep him for my painting." Madame Blackpool murmured with her eyes closed. She seemed to be crazy. The King of the Black Mountain frowned and glanced at her. His eyes stopped on the old man in green robe in the painting. He said in a deep voice, "This person must be Bai Changchun who fought with Wang Qing in the Immortal Palace. This person is a loner. I don't know what his intentions are. I don't know whether he is a friend or a foe." Madame Blackpool twisted her body comfortably. She tilted her head and opened her eyes. She smiled at him and said, "So what if he is Bai Changchun? Big brother, you have the divine wind staff. Do you still need to be afraid of him? Even so, this person must not be underestimated." The King of the Black Mountain said with a serious expression, "The King of the Black Mountain can't enter the underworld forbidden land. Even I can't do anything with the power of the divine wind staff. However, this person can enter and exit the forbidden land. Who dares to underestimate him?" Suddenly he seemed to think of something. He looked around and said, "Rumor has it that the mysterious underworld saintess also lives in the deep wood forest. Why didn't I notice anyone else here?" "Her?" Madame Blackpool suddenly stood up. She gritted her teeth and said, "That bitch is always playing tricks. She doesn't take me seriously every time I see her. Only Bai Qi would fall for her tricks. He even named her the underworld saintess. She lives in the back. It's a good time to get even with her." After saying that, he directly flashed out of the window, flew across the forest, and landed in the small courtyard with low walls made of jade. Looking around and seeing that there was no one around, he immediately rushed into the house, not letting go of a single corner to search. The King of the Black Mountain followed closely behind her. He looked around and finally, his eyes fell on the smooth black sand on the ground. He picked up a handful of sand and rubbed it in his hand. He frowned and said to himself, "Crushed spiritual stones? His eyes instinctively stared at the grindstone under the eaves. Madame Blackpool searched the house and quickly went to the deep wood forest outside to search everywhere. Later, she sent people to search the entire dark imperial palace. However, she still couldn't find the underworld saintess. When she returned to the small courtyard with a gloomy face, she saw the king of the Black Mountain standing next to the grindstone under the eaves. He held a jade archive in his hand and said nothing. In the end, we have been living a comfortable life for too long. Otherwise, we wouldn't have suffered such a defeat. If we were prepared, these people wouldn't be able to do anything. We were too careless. Kintai suddenly let out a long sigh and looked back. After confirming that no one was chasing after them, he gestured to everyone and took the lead to hide in a rocky stream below. The rest of them also followed him down there. Only Jintai, Bai Qi, Qianjun, Aojun and Tianjun were left in the stream of rocks. None of Bai Qi's subordinates escaped. They were all killed by the divine wind staff. Bai Qi was still angry at Jintai. He didn't respond to Jintai's words along the way. Jintai knew that Bai Qi blamed him for not rescuing his trusted subordinate, Huangjia Xingjun, in time. Jintai released his divine sense to scan the surrounding area. After making sure no one was around, he sneered at Bai Qi, "You are too soft-hearted. No wonder you raised that bitch Blackpool. Raising that bitch can at least please me in bed. It's better than you helping Black Mountain raise Wu Xiong's eldest son." Bai Qi immediately retorted. Silver Armor and Qianjun, who were immersed in sorrow, couldn't help but look at Jintai. Jintai Ning was speechless. He glanced at Bai Qi's subordinates. To be honest, he was actually quite envious of Bai Qi. He had long wanted to ask Bai Qi for advice on how he could bring out such a group of loyal subordinates who were willing to die. However, he could not bring himself to do so. Is there any point in saying this now? We are really stray dogs now. Let's think about how to turn things around first. Jintai glanced at the storage bracelet on Bai Qi's hand and lightly said, "What is the secret of your obsidian light mirror? Why are Wu Feng and his sister so eager to get it? If there is a secret that can help us turn things around, why don't you say it now? What is there to hide now?" Although Bai Qi was angry, he also knew that now was not the time to fight. It was better to work together and discuss a good plan. After pondering for a moment, he said, "Obsidian Light Mirror's original name is not this. There is a record left by Coiling Dragon in the Netherworld God's Palace. It is called Yin Yang Mirror." Jintai's eyes immediately lit up. How can the treasure mentioned by Coiling Dragon be easy to obtain? Is it because you can't use the power of this treasure? Otherwise, how could you block the divine wind staff? It is true that I can't use the power of this treasure, but the true power of this Yin Yang mirror is not reflected in fighting. Bai Qi glanced at Silver Armor Army and the others. They were all his trusted subordinates, so there was nothing to hide. He immediately said with a solemn expression, "According to the records of Coiling Dragon, the Yin Yang mirror can see through the two realms of Yin and Yang and control the cycle of life and death. It is said that those who can use the power of this treasure can see anyone's fate and reincarnation. In other words, it can show you who you reincarnated from in your previous life. It can also control what you reincarnate into in your next life, whether it is a human, a dog, a pig, a cow, and so on." When they heard this, they were all shocked. They didn't think that there would be such a treasure. It was a little too magical. Jintai was stunned. "This? I'm afraid even a divine weapon can't use such a miraculous effect. It can see through the yin and yang and control the cycle of life and death. This treasure is too heaven-defying. I don't know whether a divine weapon has such a miraculous effect or not, but according to the records of Coiling Dragon, this treasure is even older than a divine weapon. It is a treasure that was born when the two realms of yin and yang were still in chaos. Later, because this mirror absorbed the yin eye and yang eye of yin and yang could not see each other, so they could not mix together. Thus, yin and yang were separated, creating the two realms of yin and yang. It is said that this mirror represents the yin-yang eye. This is too mysterious and too profound. I still don't understand what it means." Bai Qi shook his head and sighed. Older than a divine weapon. Jintai's throat moved slightly, and a trace of greed flashed in his eyes. Bai Qi saw this and coldly snorted, "Unfortunately, this thing fell in the underworld when the two realms of yin and yang were divided, so it is destined to be a treasure of the underworld. Jintai, don't let your imagination run wild. Even if this thing is given to you, you have no way to control it. In your hands, it is less than a piece of scrap iron." "Nonsense, when did I let my imagination run wild?" Jintai's expression did not change and his heart did not jump as he said, "I am just curious. Although this treasure is magical, it is actually a bit weak. In terms of power, it is not even comparable to the wind god's staff in Wu Feng's hands. Why are the Wu siblings so anxious to get it? This is mainly because of the words of Coiling Dragon in the Netherworld God Palace. He said that only those who can wield the yin-yang mirror are worthy of being the ruler of the underworld. Bai Qi revealed a trace of a bitter smile and slightly shook his head. It is because of this insignificant sentence. Coiling Dragon once controlled the entire Styx, and was the main god that the Styx's water race worshipped. And those old fellows in the Netherworld God Palace who desired to ascend to the divine realm took the words left behind by Coiling Dragon as a divine decree, making people helpless. Jintai. Now you should understand why this obsidian light mirror is so important, right? Jintai pondered for a while and then nodded thoughtfully. I understand. We probably can't win against Wu Feng even if we go to the Netherworld God Manor, and we can't enter the forbidden area of the underworld. Don't tell me there's no place for us to stand within the several realms? How did we end up like this? It's all your fault. If you hadn't eradicated the wind evolution sect back then, would there be such trouble today? However, that ghost world forbidden land. Bai Qi said thoughtfully, I wonder what method that Bai Changchun used to enter and exit the mysterious forbidden land. Speaking of which, if we can rope in Bai Changchun's help, who knows, maybe that old brat's amazing skills can break the divine wind staff. Bai Changchun? Do you think that's possible? You almost killed him back then and he kept saying in the immortal palace that he would take my life in the future. There's no way to resolve the grievances between us. At this moment, Kim Tae realized that he seemed to have pushed him too far. He couldn't find a way out. His face gradually became ferocious as he said, if you push me too far, then don't blame me for being impolite. Bai Qi dragged out the last syllable and said with some disdain, how can you be impolite? It's already come to this, are you still being polite to them? Why can't I see that? Jintai said with a savage expression, open all the demon realm seals in the immortal and netherworld, and the 72 realms of the human world. Open the 74 demon realm passageways that the demon god opened back then. Even if you can't open them all, just opening one is enough. I'm sure that the three knights will seize the opportunity to lead the heroes of the demon world to the three realms again. Demon King Three Knights. The silver-armored army, purple-armored army, and blue-armored celestial army all cried out in shock. You're crazy. Bai Qi was very moved as he said sternly, back then we spent a great deal of effort to seal the three knights and his group of demons in the demon world. Once you open the demon world, the three realms will once again fall into the hands of the demon Dao. Who in the three realms can be the three knights' opponent. Back then even those old fellows in the Netherworld God Palace had to think twice and didn't dare to provoke them. So many years have passed, have you thought about how terrifying the three knights is now? Let's not talk about this for now. Back then it was you and I who used to scheme to seal them. When the three knights comes out, the first thing he will do is seek revenge on us. At that time, there really will be no path to heaven or door to hell. Jintai was silent for a while. From his abnormally serious gaze, it could be seen that he was also very afraid of the Demon King Three Knights. After thinking for a while, he looked at Bai Qi and asked indifferently, if we are forced into a corner and the three knights is willing to let us go and save us, are you willing to open the demon realm passageway and let the three knights out? The three knights will let us go and save us? Don't talk nonsense. That's impossible. We sealed them for so many years, and they want nothing more than to swallow us alive. How could they let us go? Bai Qi suddenly raised his hand and said sternly, let's stop here. I will not agree to open the demon world again. Let's not talk about this anymore. We should think of another way. Actually, if you really force me to that point, you should know that I can open the seal of the demon world by myself. I don't need your permission. Jintai stared straight at Bai Qi and said slowly, back then, after sealing the demon world, you took a piece of cloth stained with the blood of the three knights and said that you have a secret technique to communicate with the three knights of the demon world through the blood on the cloth. Presumably, you weren't lying at that time. Bai Qi sneered, you want me to communicate with the three knights of the demon world and negotiate with him on the condition that he let us go and help us, and we open the demon realm passageway to release him? That's right. That's right. Jintai nodded. Bai Qi raised his hand and pointed at his own head. With a face full of ridicule he said, use your brain and think about it. Even you, Lady Jean, go back on your word and have no integrity to speak of. Could it be that you dare place your hopes on San Yi to keep his word? He can easily agree and deal with you after he comes out. Jintai calmly said, we can make him swear on the demon god curse. From the one Night Demon Monarch to the second Night Demon Monarch to the third Night Demon Monarch, they are all direct descendants of the demon god. They worship their ancestor the demon god to the extreme. As long as the three knights swears on the demon god, he will not dare to violate the oath and blaspheme the demon god. We can use this to negotiate the conditions. What is there to be afraid of? Of course, unless the three knights is willing to be trapped in the demon world and not come out. In that case there is nothing we can do. But I'm sure he wants to come out. Bai Qi shook his head. You're crazy. With the passage of time, if the three knights doesn't take the oath seriously, I can't imagine how miserable your death will be. I know this method is very risky, but if we are forced into a dead end we will die either way. Since there is a glimmer of hope, why don't we try it? At least if we die we can drag them down with us. No one will have an easy time. Just think of it as revenge. There is nothing bad about it. Jin Tai said with a self-mocking tone. What do you think? Don't you want to take revenge for the Huang Jiasheng army? The three silver-armored soldiers looked at each other, then at the emperor of the underworld they were loyal to. Bai Qi fell into silence. After a while his eyebrows twitched. It was unknown what he thought of, but he looked at Jin Tai up and down and said, Jin Tai, you are actually a gold spirit. This is really surprising. Could it be that your physical body is made of gold? If that is the case, then you will be invincible? You have played with so many women. If you take Ji Wu as your wife, can she help you reproduce? Hearing this, Jin Tai's face instantly changed. With a twisted expression he said sternly, Bai Qi, I am talking to you about serious matters. If it wasn't for the fact that he was afraid of being discovered, he would have shouted it out loud. Don't misunderstand, I am talking about serious matters. Bai Qi continued to ask in a curious tone, as far as I know, there are 5 great spirits in this world. Since you are a gold spirit, then there should be other spirits. Do you not have a way to contact them for help? Bai Qi, you still dare to mention Jin Tai's angry face froze. Suddenly he clenched his fists and said, how could I forget about him? If we can find him for help, we might be able to solve the problem. Who? Is he also one of the 5 great spirits? Bai Qi's eyes lit up. The 3 silver-armored soldiers' eyes also lit up when they heard that there was hope to solve the problem. Jin Tai squinted his eyes and said, that old thing always appears and disappears mysteriously, but he is indeed a capable person. At least he is stronger than me. It is just that he is used to staying aloof from worldly affairs. I don't know if we can find him. Saying this, he suddenly turned around and said, let's go. We will return to the immortal world and go to the ancient forest of Wood Immortal Province. Maybe we can find him there. Okay. Bai Qi nodded. The silver-armored soldiers was startled. He quickly cupped his fists and said in a low voice, Emperor of the Underworld, we have contacted Jianghu. The Purgatory army was attacked by a large number of people. Now they are all dead. Jianghu led a few of his subordinates to escape and found a chance to send a message to us. He asked where to meet us. Should we ask him to go directly to the immortal world? Bai Qi slowly turned around and looked at his 3 subordinates. He tightly pursed his lips for a while. Then he secretly took out a crystal-clear ice talisman and stuffed it into the silver-armored soldier's hands. He transmitted his voice to the 3 silver-armored soldiers at the same time. I don't know what will happen if I go there. If there is trouble, it is not difficult for me to escape with my cultivation. But it is too dangerous for you to go with me. Remember what I said, change your appearances and sneak to the Great Snow Mountain. Let Jianghu meet you there. They tried their best to suppress their excitement as they saluted, Farewell, Underworld Emperor. When they raised their heads again, the figure in front of them had already disappeared, and 2 flowing lights, one gold and one white, disappeared on the horizon. A flying shuttle was flying toward the Minghuang Mountain at a moderate speed. Along the way they would occasionally bump into large groups or small groups of people chasing and killing each other, making them feel that the netherworld was already in chaos. Nie Xiaoqian and the others didn't want to encounter any trouble on the way, so they had already changed their conspicuous golden robes. The flying shuttle didn't dare to fly too fast. Firstly, it was afraid of attracting too much attention. Secondly, Nie Xiaoqian and the others were constantly observing their surroundings. Because they didn't know Kim Tae's exact location, they couldn't communicate with him through voice transmissions, so they could only rely on their eyesight to carefully search for him. None of this had anything to do with Xianxia. Xianxia was still using his old habits, sitting at the back of the group and thinking about his own matters. In the end, she actually walked to the back of the group and sat next to Xianxia. However, what made him depressed was that Qingyang kept glancing at him from time to time. What was even more excessive was that she didn't seem to enjoy looking at him from afar. In the end, she leisurely walked to the back and bent down to sit next to Yu Qianqiu. This immediately attracted everyone's attention. From time to time, everyone would glance behind them. This was because everyone who knew Qingyang knew that this woman didn't care about ordinary men at all, let alone sitting next to a stranger. In this way, it immediately attracted everyone's attention. From time to time, they would look back because those who knew Qingyang all knew that this woman didn't care about ordinary men at all, let alone a stranger who was sitting shoulder to shoulder with her. Especially Nie Xiaoqian's eyes, which were unscrupulously looking back and forth between the two of them, were full of suspicion. Yu Qianqiu, who was sitting on pins and needles, had a vague feeling that Qingyang might have recognized him, but for some reason she couldn't be sure. After all, the two of them had been dancing together for a few days. Not only were they very familiar with each other's body shape, eyes and ears, they could even recognize each other's body odor. After thinking this through, Yu Qianqiu cursed inwardly. Since he had already started, he decided to just go with the flow. He moved his body to the side, not letting Qingyang see his face, and lied down, pretending to sleep. In the end, he really did fall asleep. His dreams were filled with scenes of him and Qingyang dancing naked in the Green Pear Palace and being scolded by her. After an unknown amount of time, the speed of the flying shuttle suddenly decreased. Yu Qianqiu immediately woke up from his muddle-headedness. Hearing the sounds of fierce fighting, he immediately sat up. Nie Xiaoqian quickly walked forward and asked in a low voice, "What's wrong?" And Gao, who was driving the flying shuttle, pointed forward and said, "There are thousands of people fighting in front of us. Should we go around them?" Everyone looked over and saw a wide canyon between two towering mountains in front of them. Thousands of people were fighting in the canyon. The group that had the advantage in numbers looked like the Netherworld's Dark Nether Army from their clothes. The battle looked more like a siege battle between the Dark Nether Army and the Dark Nether Army. Let's avoid the Dark Nether Army as much as possible. Nie Xiaoqian thought for a moment, then waved her hand and pointed at the towering mountain on the left, saying, "Go around the mountain on the left." And Gao obeyed and quickly drove the flying shuttle to the mountain on the left. When the battle in the canyon disappeared from everyone's sight, the flying shuttle had just gone around the back of the mountain and was about to speed up, but suddenly, a streak of light flew over from the mountain and blocked the flying shuttle's path. The flying shuttle abruptly stopped. A woman in black with shoulder-length hair and half her face covered by a veil was blocking the way. Her deep gaze swept across everyone, causing everyone to become vigilant. Yu Qianqiu also quickly stood up. However, the people in front of him blocked his line of sight, so he naturally stepped on the horizontal board at the end of the shuttle that he had just been sitting on. He raised his head to take a look, but unexpectedly, his eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. His head shrank back and he quickly sat back down. Qingyang, who was sitting next to him, frowned and stared at the place where he had just stepped on. It seemed that she was not used to his country bumpkin style. The black-clothed woman in front of them looked at Nie Xiaoqian's face and said indifferently, "So it's the Immortal Palace's chief steward Nie. Long time no see." Everyone's eyes were fixed on Nie Xiaoqian. Nie Xiaoqian was slightly startled and seemed to remember something. She quickly cupped her hands in surprise and said, "So it's the Saintess. Saintess, why are you here?" Based on everyone's experience, they immediately guessed that the person who had just arrived was the mysterious woman that the Underworld Emperor Bai Qi had called the Saintess of the Underworld. They couldn't help but look at her with great surprise. Qingyang was also curious to see what this legendary Saintess of the Underworld looked like. However, when she tilted her head slightly, she found that Yu Qianqiu was sitting motionlessly like an old monk in meditation. She suppressed the urge to stand up and take a look. However, he discovered that Qingyang was staring at him with wide eyes. It was obvious that he was looking in the wrong direction. Thus, he coughed again and tilted his head to the right, pretending to look at the pitch-black scenery outside. Chapter 1108. However, to everyone's surprise, the Netherworld Saintess raised her leg and gently nudged his leg, indicating for him to sit a little further in. Yu Qianqiu raised his head in surprise and obediently moved his butt in. As a result, he bumped into Qingyang's butt. The Netherworld Saintess' name caused Qingyang to cooperate and move her butt further out. Finally, there was a small empty space at the end of the shuttle, and the Netherworld Saintess sat down without any hesitation. What did it mean to be on pins and needles? Yu Qianqiu now had another understanding of the situation. The situation was like this. There were 3 people in the small space and 2 women were sandwiching a man in the middle. In fact, the 2 women knew him and he also knew the 2 women. However, he had changed his appearance and wanted to pretend that he didn't know the 2 women. However, the 2 women seemed to recognize him, and he had to pretend that he didn't know them. Thus, the 2 women began to push him left and right. There was also a group of people watching the show with surprised expressions. They thought that he had done something to the 2 women, but in fact, he hadn't done anything to them. Xiaoqian and the others looked at the 3 people in the back with suspicious eyes. They couldn't figure out what the 3 people were doing. Could it be that there was a place with good feng shui behind them? Or could it be that Niu Yi's charm was limitless, and women fell in love at first sight? Even if it was a place with good feng shui, even if Niu Yi's charm was limitless, there was no need to do this in front of everyone, right? Yu Qianzhou straightened his back and sat there motionlessly. At this moment, he couldn't find even the slightest bit of feeling like he was hugging a woman on his left and right. There were still faint sounds of fighting coming from the canyon on the other side of the mountain, but aside from the sound of the wind, it was eerily quiet here. Under everyone's gaze, Yu Qianzhou swallowed with difficulty. Just as he was about to stand up, a hand suddenly reached out from his right and stopped him from getting up. Yu Qianzhou slowly turned around and saw that the underworld saintess was looking at him with a profound gaze. He immediately confirmed that the other party had recognized him. Hence, his shoulders and waist slumped as he shamelessly sat between the 2 women. Who's afraid of who? After a while, Nie Xiaoqian walked through the crowd and came to the back. She cupped her hands to the saintess of the underworld and asked, "Saintess, are you going to wait here for the underworld emperor?" The netherworld saintess nodded slightly and didn't say anything. Nie Xiaoqian said, "I understand." She looked at her daughter again and didn't know what she was doing. She then turned around and gave the others a look. Everyone turned around and didn't want to watch anymore. Yu Qianzhou immediately felt the pressure on him lessen significantly. He tilted his head to look at the netherworld saintess and transmitted his voice respectfully, "Saintess, what is your intention in doing this?" The saintess of the underworld also tilted her head to look at him and sent him a telepathic message. "Yu Qianzhou, you are so capricious. You were dressed like a barbarian before. I almost didn't recognize you. I almost let you go for nothing." Yu Qianzhou refused to admit his mistake. "Saintess, have you mistaken me for someone else? My name is Niu Yi, not Yu Qianzhou." The underworld saintess blinked her eyes and said, "You can hide it from others, but how can you hide it from me? You should know that I am proficient in divination and can see many things that others can't. How can your little tricks fool my eyes? Do you want me to expose your true colors in front of everyone?" "No wonder you are the saintess of the underworld. I can't fool you." Yu Qianzhou snorted. He was a little displeased by the other party's belittling and threatening words. It's not a big deal to be proficient in divination. Take me for example. Although I am also proficient in divination, I always keep a low profile and never show it off in front of others. I think it's meaningless to do so. To put it bluntly, it's just vulgar. Oh, from what you said, it seems that you are also proficient in divination. I really can't see it. If there is a chance, I want to see it. The saintess of the underworld's tone was somewhat sarcastic. Yu Qianzhou had set a trap for her to fall into. He expected that she would say this, so he asked, "If you really want to see it, I can show you a few of my skills since there is nothing to do now. I'm just afraid that it will scare you." "Scare me? Not to that extent. I will wait and see." The saintess of the underworld looked around as if she wanted to choose someone for Yu Qianzhou to read their fortune. Unexpectedly, she found that her hand was grabbed by someone. She looked back coldly and saw Yu Qianzhou rubbing one of her hands. He even had a greasy smile on his face, revealing a very wretched look. She had never been treated so disrespectfully before. She immediately said in a cold tone, "Are you courting death?" Qingyang, who had been silently observing the actions of the two, was stunned. From their expressions, she could tell that the two of them seemed to be conversing with each other through voice transmissions. She never would have thought that the fellow beside her would actually do something like profaning the underworld saintess. She could already see the murderous intent in the underworld saintess' eyes, but the fellow was still smiling shamelessly. "Didn't you want to see my divination skills? It's best to use you to verify it. You should know whether or not your divination is accurate. Otherwise you will say that I am talking nonsense. Why are you looking at me like that?" Chapter 1109. Was there a need to ask? Even if he didn't touch her hand and didn't deliberately disgust her, he was sure that he was right. However, the underworld saintess didn't think so. Ever since she walked out of the all-heavens boundary, she hadn't told anyone her name. It had been so long that she had almost forgotten what her name was. It was even more impossible for people outside the all-heavens boundary to know her name. If it was a coincidence that Yu got one word right, then why did he get two words right in a row? What convinced her most was that Yu calculation was reasonable and convincing, and it didn't seem like a blind guess at all. Most importantly, Yu calculations were correct. Her name really did have the characters Tai and Xian in it. This was definitely not something that could be found through simple guesses and guesses. Although she was proficient in the art of divination, she was frankly shocked, very shocked. She never dreamed that Yu would have this skill. Not only did she look at him in a new light, but she also suddenly felt that this Yu was somewhat unfathomable. Thinking that she couldn't see through his fate, it was naturally not surprising that he had some hidden skills. Therefore, she was even more certain that he was the person she was looking for. How could she know that Yu had mingled with people from all walks of life in his previous life? What kind of tricks had he not seen? It was as easy as a knife cutting tofu to fool a person with little experience like her. Especially with his eloquence, even a veteran of the jianghu would inevitably fall for it. Seeing that the other party was shocked by his fortune-telling skill and couldn't speak for a long time, looking at him with extremely complicated emotions, Yu immediately squeezed out an unfathomable smile, but his eyes were maliciously glancing from her face to her chest, wondering which place to touch next. What else? The underworld saintess suppressed her emotions and asked. Yu recovered from his imagination and casually said, "Your name is 3 words. Why do you say that?" Her tone was no longer as harsh as before. Yu rolled his eyes. Just as he was about to display the divine quintessence of blind fortune-telling that he learned in his previous life, he realized that something was amiss. His eyeballs immediately drooped down and he said helplessly, "Do you think I'm an idiot? Was there even a need to calculate this? You've already said that there's more. Since there's more, it's naturally 3 words. It seems like there are quite a few people with 4-character names, right?" The netherworld saintess sneered. Yu realized that he couldn't justify himself. He immediately took out his special skill of fortune-telling for the saintess of the underworld and changed the topic. He didn't care if they were the immortal emperor or the emperor of the underworld. Jin Tai and Bai Qi looked at the two motionless people and glanced at each other. Then they landed on the flying shuttle and politely cupped their hands towards the netherworld saintess. Bai Qi bitterly smiled and said, "I heard from Qianjun that the saintess had secretly left the underworld royal palace a few days before the war broke out. It seems that the saintess had already predicted this calamity." Jin Tai indifferently snorted and said, "So what if she predicted it? Didn't your underworld royal palace still perish?" He was clearly unhappy that the netherworld saintess didn't warn him in advance. The might of the heavens is hard to predict. No one can see the trend of the heavenly Tao. Who can go against the trend of the heavens? They can only go with the flow. If it wasn't for this, why would I be trapped in the mortal world for 100,000 years? The netherworld saintess glanced at the two and said, "Under the might of the heavens, I am like a small boat in a raging river. I can't stop anything. It is already not bad that I could reach the shore in the midst of the raging waves." Jin Tai coldly snorted, "If the might of the heavens is hard to predict, then why did the saintess avoid the disaster in advance? If I could predict the movement of the might of the heavens, then I would be the heavenly Tao. I just happened to avoid this disaster because I wanted to find someone. This is fate." The netherworld saintess lightly waved her hand and said, "If I didn't deliberately delay here for a while, I'm afraid the two of you would have already encountered Wang Qin. There's no point in reasoning with people like you." Jin Tai flew into a rage, but Bai Qi quickly blocked him. Looking at Yu Qianzhou, who was sitting together with the netherworld saintess, he was slightly surprised. He squinted his eyes and asked, "This friend's face is covered with something. It seems like he doesn't want to show his face. I wonder if he is an old acquaintance of Bai Qi?" Jin Tai immediately looked over and coldly snorted, "Hiding your head and hiding your tail. One look and I can tell that you are hiding something." The others were slightly shocked as they looked at Yu Qianzhou. They didn't have Jin Tai and Bai Qi's microscopic vision that could see through the human skin mask. Qingyang's expression shook. Her eyes flickered as she stared at Yu Qianzhou. She was more and more convinced of her guess. Deming Luan quickly came out and cupped his hands at Jin Tai. "Immortal Emperor, please calm your anger. This person was sent by an old friend of mine to inform this subordinate. It was precisely because of his timely report that this subordinate was saved from danger." Jin Tai glanced at the others. Seeing Ye Xiaoqian nod in agreement, he shouted, "Then let him take off his mask." Yu Qianqiu was just about to take Deming Luan and leave when the Netherworld Saintess quietly said, "He is my subordinate. I don't think he needs to listen to you, right?" Chapter 11:10. The great Ming Luan, who had received Yu Qianqiu's secret message, also felt that it was inappropriate to stay here for Yu Qianqiu's safety. However, when he heard the Underworld Saintess's words, he felt that there was still a chance, so he asked Yu Qianqiu to wait for an opportunity. Jin Tai raised his sword-like eyebrows and stared at the Underworld Saintess with a murderous look. "You shameless bitch. Do you really think that I don't dare to kill you?" Bai Qi frowned slightly. He stood in front of Jin Tai and said sternly, "Jin Tai, what do you want to do? Now is not the time to have internal strife." "You want to have internal strife just because I killed her?" Jin Tai stared at Bai Qi coldly and snorted, "Are you going to fall out with me because of her?" Bai Qi, "So what if you have served this bitch for so many years? So what if I have always been respectful to her? Your underworld royal palace and my immortal palace will collapse just like that. What's the use of keeping this bitch?" In one sentence, he revealed the reason why he was respectful to her. "I have never expected you to be respectful to others from the bottom of your heart. I'm not surprised that you have said this." The Underworld Saintess slowly stood up and turned to look at the distant night sky. She gave people a feeling of emptiness and said lightly, "If I am not wrong, you should want to go to the immortal world to find someone to help you out of your predicament, Jin Tai. If you dare to touch me, I won't say that you can't find the person you are looking for, but at least I will make you die without a burial place." "Just you?" Jin Tai snorted disdainfully, but his eyes slightly glanced at Bai Qi. He saw that Bai Qi was looking at the Underworld Saintess with a surprised expression. It seemed that he did not secretly reveal to the Underworld Saintess that he was going to the immortal world's ancient forest. Jin Tai was secretly shocked and dispelled the idea of being too presumptuous. The Underworld Saintess tilted her head and looked at him and said indifferently, "You can try and touch me. Okay. We should be in the same boat at this time. Don't quarrel over such a small matter." It could be said that Bai Qi understood Jin Tai better, so he quickly spoke up to be the peacemaker. Jin Tai just coldly snorted and followed Bai Qi's way down the slope, not mentioning the matter of Yu Qianqiu again. The others remained silent and didn't say anything. Bai Qi glanced at Yu Qianqiu, who was still sitting motionlessly. He didn't see any part of him that looked like a subordinate of the Underworld Saintess. He turned to Ye Xiaoqian and said, "You drive the flying shuttle to the ancient forest in the immortal world." An ancient forest in the immortal world? Yu Qianqiu, who had been maintaining his vigilance, was startled. He immediately thought of the person that Wei Chuanqiu had mentioned from the Underworld Saintess' words. He couldn't help but mutter in his heart, could it be that Bai Qi and Jin Tai are looking for Wei Chuanqiu's grandfather to come out and help? Thinking of this, he immediately had the intention to follow and see what was going on. He was not in a hurry to leave. Ye Xiaoqian glanced at Jin Tai. Seeing that her master had no intention of objecting, she immediately said, "Yes." Taking over in Gao's role, the flying shuttle turned into a stream of light and flew away. No one on the flying shuttle spoke. The Netherworld Saintess tilted her head to look at Yu Qianqiu, who seemed to be thinking of something, and sat down next to him. It was not convenient for Qingyang to sit down in front of the immortal emperor, so the man and woman sitting at the back were no longer crowded. Bai Qi turned back to look at the two of them, but didn't say anything. Yu Qianqiu, who was sitting next to the Netherworld Saintess, transmitted his voice and asked, "Who are they going to the ancient forest in the immortal world to find?" He wanted to confirm his guess. "I don't know." The Netherworld Saintess answered very straightforwardly. "Oh." Yu Qianqiu choked for a while. "Didn't you calculate that they are going to the immortal world to find someone to help them get out of their predicament?" "I only roughly calculated some of their movements. If I can even calculate what they are going to do or who they are looking for, then doesn't that mean I can control everyone's fate?" The Netherworld Saintess looked at him and asked, "Could it be that your bone-touching fortune-telling technique is so amazing?" Although she refused to openly admit that Yu Qianqiu had the ability to tell fortunes, her words undoubtedly showed that she really believed him. Yu Qianqiu paused for a moment, his gaze landing on her face that was half covered by a black veil. He was very curious about what the face behind the black veil looked like. Blinking his eyes, he shamelessly replied, "Of course. If you let me carefully touch your face, I'll be able to calculate who you're looking for and what you're doing." In his heart, he added, "I've long since calculated that you want to find the devil god for revenge." He was making irresponsible remarks, but the netherworld saintess was frightened by his accurate name. Her eyes flashed as she looked at Bai Qi and Jin Tai, and she changed the topic. Since you are so clever, why do you still ask me? Why don't you just calculate for them and find out who they are looking for? Yu Qianzhou rolled his eyes and said in confusion, I say Taishu Xian, do you think Jin Tai and Bai Qi will let me touch their faces? My name is not Taishu Xian. You are wrong. The netherworld saintess said this and didn't say anything, so Yu Qianzhou's fortune-telling magic was stuck in his mouth and couldn't be used. After crossing the underworld and entering the immortal world, because they had to avoid as many people as possible, and at the same time they had to hide. So even though Nie Xiaoqian personally drove the flying shuttle at an extremely fast speed, it still took them half a month to finally enter a vast forest, which was their destination. Finally, they arrived at the ancient forest of the Wood Fairy province. Although they were still at the periphery of the ancient forest, they could see towering trees everywhere. The forest was dark, and the sporadic light from the sunlight dotted the surroundings. The old trees and vines were entangled, and the ground was covered with thick rotten leaves. You could hear the rustling sound when you stepped on it. The 11 people quickly looked around, and they all knew that there were countless plant spirits in this ancient forest. Finally, their eyes all focused on Jin Tai. Except for Yu Qianzhou, who could guess most of it, no one else knew who Jin Tai was looking for. Jin Tai, where is the person you were talking about? Bai Qi asked, floating 1 foot above the ground. His bare feet obviously didn't want to step on the rotten leaves on the ground. He should be in this ancient forest. Jin Tai's eyes flickered as he looked into the depths of the forest. Then he asked Nie Xiaoqian to give him 10 jade talismans. Holding them together in his palm, 10 faint golden light flowed out of his palm and seeped into the 10 jade talismans. He then gently waved his hand and the 10 jade talismans flew in front of the 10 people. Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what Jin Tai was doing. One by one they grabbed the jade talismans in front of them. Bai Qi stretched out 2 slender fingers and held the jade talismans in front of him. He repeatedly checked the jade talismans in front of him and frowned. Jin Tai, what do you mean by this? Jin Tai waved his arm and pointed around and said arrogantly, everyone split up and search in the ancient forest. If you see an old guy with a wooden staff, he should be the person we are looking for. Immediately crush the communication talisman in your hand to summon me. Nie Xiaoqian and the other immortal palace remnants paused for a moment, but they still saluted in unison. Yes, immortal emperor. Bai Qi looked at Jin Tai and his expression twitched a little. He said in a deep voice, Jin Tai, are you kidding me? You don't even know where the person is and you brought me here? The entire ancient forest is so big. Trying to find a person here aimlessly is like looking for a needle in a haystack. How do you want us to find him? Jin Tai immediately looked at him and said indifferently, do you have a better way? At least it's better than your stupid way. Bai Qi looked around the depths of the forest coldly and said, there are many plants in this ancient forest. As long as you catch a few and ask them, you will naturally find the person you are looking for. Qin Tai coldly snorted and said, I don't know how many times I've used this clever method of yours, but it's completely useless. Even in the ancient forest, that old fellow's traces are elusive. Even if it's the grass demons that live here all year round, they at most know of the existence of such a person, but no one knows where he is. As soon as these words came out, everyone felt that it was even more difficult to find him. Bai Qi paused and suddenly revealed a ruthless expression. Desperate times call for desperate measures. We can't care so much anymore. Set fire to the forest and we will be able to force him out. If he really can help us like you said, even if we make a big commotion and alarm our opponents, we don't have to be afraid. Set fire to the ancient forest? Jin Tai's slender eyes flashed and he said sarcastically, this is a good idea, but I'm afraid that even if we force him out, not only will he not help us, but he will also take both of our lives. Do you think that our current opponents are not strong enough? Hearing this, Bai Qi remembered that the person they were looking for was probably the wood spirit, one of the 5 spirits of heaven and earth. Setting fire to the wood spirit's territory might really anger the wood spirit. Seeing that Bai Qi didn't say anything, Jin Tai glanced at the others and said, let's split up and search, we will have a higher chance of finding him. After saying that, he turned into a beam of light and flew into the depths of the forest, seeming to be a bit impatient. The remnants of the immortal palace obeyed and scattered in the dark forest. Before Qing Yang left, she looked at Yu Qianzhou and wanted to say something, but she stopped for a while. She saw that Yu Qianzhou was holding the big bright wheel, and the emperor of the underworld and the saintess of the underworld were still there. She couldn't say anything, so she turned around and flew into the forest. Who knew that not long after she flew into the forest, her mother, Xiaoqian, flashed to her side. Xiaoqian was obviously worried about her inexperienced daughter risking her life in the ancient forest alone, so the two of them left together. In reality, everyone knew that the wood spirits in the ancient forest weren't just for show. There were many unknown dangers hidden in the depths of the forest. The four scattered commanders also coincidentally met up not far away. It wasn't that they didn't want to obey the immortal emperor's decree, it was just a coincidence. Thus, the four of them split into two groups, and the distance between the two groups wasn't too far. Big bright wheel. My cultivation level is low, so I'll have to trouble you to take care of me. Yu Qianqiu grabbed the big bright wheel's sleeve with a smile, and the big bright wheel nodded graciously. Just as the two of them were about to leave together, they heard the saintess of the underworld suddenly shout, "Niu Yud! You are my subordinate, so naturally I will be the one to take care of you." She also flashed over. Bai Qi, who was floating barefoot, looked at the three of them and sneered. He indifferently interjected, "Jin Tai has already left. Do you three still want to put on an act in front of me? Yu Qianqiu. We haven't seen each other for a long time." Chapter 11:11. The three of them looked back at the same time. Yu Qianqiu showed a puzzled expression, looking at the underworld saintess Taishu Xian, and then at the great bright wheel but not at himself. Of course, it was inconvenient for him to look at himself, as he didn't seem to know who Yu Qianqiu was talking about. Bai Qi stared at Yu Qianqiu, who was pretending to be ignorant, and said with a faint smile, "Yu Qianqiu, do you really want me to tear off the mask on your face to see you?" The great bright wheel's expression changed slightly, but the underworld saintess Taishu Xian remained calm. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. With Bai Qi's cultivation, it shouldn't be difficult for him to see that he was wearing a mask, but he didn't believe that Bai Qi could see his face behind the mask. At most, he would be suspicious and maybe he was trying to trick him. Yu Qianqiu pointed at his nose and asked, "Is the Emperor of the Underworld calling me? My name is Niu Yid. How could the Emperor of the Underworld mistake me for Yu Qianqiu?" He wouldn't give up until he reached the Yellow River. Mistake? Bai Qi snorted, feeling somewhat unhappy, but he still maintained his gentlemanly demeanor, pointing at Yu Qianqiu and saying with a smile, "If you were standing in front of me alone, I probably wouldn't think that you were Yu Qianqiu. The Great Bright Will has a close relationship with the Tuyao cultivators of the World Chamber of Commerce, so he must have a close relationship with you as well. As for the minor immortal cultivator who could be favored by the saintess, I only heard her mention a fellow called Yu Qianqiu, and never heard her mention anyone else. Also, don't forget that we talked face to face in the Endless Cliffs. It's rare to see a minor immortal cultivator who needs my concentration to see their cultivation. It can't be that so many things happen at the same time, right? Yu Qianqiu. You can hide it from Lady Jean, but you can't hide it from me. I treated you with sincerity. Do you think it's necessary to hide it in front of me?" It turned out that there were so many flaws. It seemed like he had no choice but to admit it. Yu Qianqiu let out a bitter smile while rubbing his nose. He bowed to Bai Qi and said, "Emperor of the Underworld, please forgive me. I really had no choice. Yu Qianqiu knows his mistake." "It's good that you know your mistakes." Bai Qi glanced at the underworld saintess and easily forgave her. He smiled faintly and said, "Naturally you have your reasons for hiding your true appearance. It has nothing to do with me, so I don't need to pursue it. But I think you don't want to see the Heartless Palace dominate the world, so we should try our best to find the person Jin Tai mentioned." As soon as he finished speaking, he immediately dashed into the dense forest. As expected, he did not pursue Yu Qianqiu. It seemed like he was trying to be friendly. His gaze was deeply immersed in that peerlessly beautiful face, and he couldn't pull himself away. "Didn't you say that as long as I let you carefully feel the bones of my face, you'll be able to calculate who I'm looking for or what I'm doing?" Taishu Xian's pair of beautiful eyes stared at him. The meaning behind her words was very clear. She was clearly asking Yu Qianqiu to use his bone-touching fortune-telling technique again. In fact, the reason why she was pestering Yu Qianqiu was very simple. Naturally, it wasn't because she was attracted to Yu Qianqiu's masculinity. She understood that with her cultivation talent, she would never be able to match a terrifying existence like the devil god. However, she couldn't find anyone with that ability even after searching everywhere. On the contrary, when she talked about Yu Qianqiu with Bai Qi, she had a hint of understanding. Could it be that Yu Qianqiu and Bai Changchun, whose fate couldn't be seen clearly, were the people she was looking for? Although she couldn't be sure if it was those two people, she decided to start with Yu. Because Bai Changchun wasn't that easy to control, she decided to pester Yu. As a result, Yu's bone-touching fortune-telling technique shocked her. Listening to his words and observing his actions, it seemed that he was much stronger than her innate talent. At first, she was a little resistant and didn't want to let Yu touch the secrets in the depths of her heart. However, after thinking about it, she was extremely happy. Since Yu was so good at fortune-telling, he might be able to calculate who could help her take revenge. Therefore, this scene happened. Looking at the beautiful face in front of him, Yu came back to his senses. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. He thought to himself, indeed, dragons give birth to dragons, phoenixes give birth to phoenixes, and mice give birth to children that know how to dig holes. No wonder she was the daughter of Ming, who could attract the devil god and the ancestor of all demons at the same time. The genes that she was born with couldn't be erased. From this, it could be seen how beautiful Ming was in the past. The beauty in front of him made Yu's fingers twitch. He rubbed his hands and smiled awkwardly. Since it's the order of the saintess, how can Yu dare to disobey? What he meant was, then I won't be polite. He pretended to be in a difficult position and strode over to her. Seeing him walking over, Taishu Xian's heart was also beating wildly. No man had ever touched her face. She bit her lips slightly and slowly closed her eyes. Yu who was walking over, stretched out a finger to hook the beautiful jade-like jaw. A smile of success appeared on his face. In his mind, he was already thinking whether he should touch the soft and nice parts of the woman's body next. However, unfortunately, when he moved forward, a ray of sunlight shone through the shade of the trees and directly shone on his eyes. Disappointing. Yu tilted his head to avoid the dazzling sunlight. When his finger almost touched the other's chin, he looked at the delicate and beautiful face with closed eyes and suddenly paused. In his mind, Grandma Yan's earnest expectation in the boundary formation of heavens appeared. He had promised Taishu Xian that he would tell Taishu Xian that Grandma Yan missed her very much. Did he really want to take advantage of her for a moment of pleasure? Yu outstretched hand slowly dropped down, and the snicker on his face gradually disappeared. Regardless of whether he would offend Taishu Xian by doing this, at least he could have a good relationship with Grandma Yan in the boundary formation of heavens. Maybe she could help him in the future. How could he lose the big picture because of a small gain? Looking at Taishu Xian, who seemed to notice that something was wrong and was about to open her eyes, Yu took a step back and said with a wry smile, Taishu Xian, Grandma Yan misses you very much. Grandma Yan? Taishu Xian was very moved. She opened her eyes and said with a pair of beautiful eyes, this is also calculated by you? Don't count for anything. Yu sighed and said, I was just joking with you. I don't really know how to read fortunes. It's just that you haven't gone back to see Grandma Yan for so many years, so I'm just giving you a slight punishment. He first denied that he had taken advantage of Grandma Yan and said honestly, I have entered the boundary formation of heavens and met Grandma Yan. I have heard Grandma Yan talk about you. Impossible. How could you have passed through the boundary formation of heavens? Taishu Xian shook his head repeatedly to express his disbelief. Without a choice, Yu could only roughly explain the matter of him meeting Grandma Yan. However, he excluded the matter of finding Bai Changchun and Xin Yu being able to enter and exit the boundary formation of heavens at will. After all, he didn't know Taishu Xian's character very well, so he didn't dare to reveal anything. Looking at Taishu Xian's expression, which showed that he had already believed him, Yu sighed and said, Taishu Xian. It's easier said than done to deal with the demonic god. Currently, the immortal realm and the netherworld are already in chaos. Although your cultivation is higher than mine, I'm afraid it's not enough to guarantee your own safety. You'd better go back. Grandma Yan really misses you. Go back. Taishu Xian muttered to himself in a daze, if I don't take revenge for my parents, how can I calm down and stay there? I have already conveyed Grandma Yan's words. It's up to you whether you want to go back or not. I can't force you. If you want to go back, just let me know. I will find a way to send you back. Think about it yourself. Yu looked at her, who was in a daze, and shrugged his shoulders. He left her alone and flashed towards the direction where the great bright wheel had left. In the depths of the dense forest 10 miles away, the great bright wheel was really waiting for him. When the two met, the great bright wheel looked behind him and found that he was alone. It couldn't help but ask, you got rid of the netherworld saintess? You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.